is from Jacqui Keenan, and many of you know Jacqui because she's just outstanding. She's the coordinator of Biosphere Isle of Man. And when we collect bio notes for the festival, I think this captures you, or could we capture you? It captures you enough. Equally fascinated with people and the rest of nature, Jacqui Keenan has a background in community-led conservation and marine science. Having worked on islands and coastlines from Fiji to Falmouth, Jacqui returned to the Isle of Man in 2022 to put that eclectic experience gained across these sectors to use in her dear Ellen Bannon. Jacqui's going to give us a short presentation on literally called The State of the Biosphere. That's our biosphere right now. So somebody from Jacqui Keenan. Thank you, Jacqui.
Thank you, Gail. And thank you everybody for sticking around. I know it's at the end of the day, but this is going to be fairly short. I'm also slightly intimidated. There have been such amazing talks all day today, and some of you will have already heard a lot about the biosphere in different contexts. So I'm going to give some more context for people who haven't necessarily heard about it today. Gail invited me to do this talk. We've recently formed a new board for the biosphere, and some of the members of the board are here today. And me and the team, so Beth and Brisha and Pierre, who is our research student for a while, did a State of the Biosphere talk for the board, and Gail said, can you do a version of this at the research festival? I was like, absolutely. It was an hour and a half long. And I said, how long have I got? She said, 10, 15 minutes. So welcome to the roller coaster. We'll see how we go. But yeah, Bas and I, thank you very much for being here. I am Jacqui Keenan, and I'm the coordinator of Biosphere Isle of Man. So I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to biosphere reserves, what they are, a slight reflection on our last 9 years of the biosphere, and what we see as a vision for the future. So UNESCO was actually formed in November 1945, so it's the 80th anniversary in November this year, which is really exciting. And it was formed at the end of World War II to foster peace through collaboration. That's collaboration in education, science and culture. So it's the E.S.C. of UNESCO. And it seems like a pertinent aim for our times. Biosphere reserves themselves are special places for people and the rest of nature. They're often called learning places for sustainable development. And what's essential about them is that people are placed within the biosphere. You can't have a biosphere reserve without people living there. And it's about the relationship between people and their environment, recognising that we're inseparable, we are part of our environment. There are 784 biosphere reserves all over the world in 142 different countries. So we're all very different. But we all have these three shared global functions, and that is to conserve biological and cultural diversity. It's development, which is sustainable, so it's balancing the needs of humans and the more than human beings, both now and into the future. And it's learning and inspiration, so it's making sure that we have research and education that really underpin that development and conservation. So research and education are key parts of all biosphere reserves, and all biospheres have a responsibility to be living laboratories and to drive innovation and to find more sustainable ways of living. So, the Isle of Man Biosphere Reserve, we were the first whole jurisdiction biosphere reserve, recently joined 2 weeks ago by the Sao Tome and Principe Biosphere Reserve, which is off the west coast of Africa, and our biosphere reserve encompasses our whole territory, so that's the 13%, which is our island, and the 87%, which is our sea. So we're more water than we are land, everybody, but it's the whole of our territory. And it's kind of encompassed by these three main priorities or themes, which is community, so that's our culture, our heritage, it's the people who make the island what it is. It's our youth and our amazing Biosphere Youth Network, and more importantly, it's about the connections that we have with each other, and how do we foster those and improve our social cohesion. It's about the environment, so as I say, we are part of the environment, we eat from the earth, we breathe the air, but this is about that more than human element of the environment and our relationship with it. And it's about our prosperity, which does mean our economy. Can we make our economy more regenerative, more circular? So it is about wealth, but it is about the other aspects of prosperity that give us the means to thrive. I always get an exceedingly dry mouth when I talk. So So we are hosted, the small but perfectly filmed Biosphere team. We're hosted within DEFA, the Department for Environment, Food and Agriculture, and we are a small team. So at the moment there is me, there is our Biosphere Review Officer Beth, who's sitting over there, and Brisha, who was here somewhere as well, but there is only 3 of us. The status, what does it mean? We're quite often asked what does Biosphere mean? So it doesn't mean that we're perfect, it's not a badge of perfection that says that we have done amazingly, we don't need to do anything else. But it does say that we're trying. It's a recognition of the efforts of the community on the island. It's not about what 3 people in DEFA do by any means. We certainly weren't designated for that reason. It's about what the community of the Isle of Man has already done and continues to try to do. And most of all, it's a responsibility to continually try to do better, to find more sustainable ways of living, and to trial different practices and be innovative. So, all biosphere reserves have to do a 10-year review to UNESCO. So if we were designated in 2016, we're in year 9. So we are currently doing our periodic review for submission on the 30th of September next year. So it's a huge piece of work, and it involves speaking to our stakeholders, to our partners, to the general public, who are the stakeholders for the biosphere. It's a massive piece of work. Beth has been leading on it since February this year. It seems like such a long time ago. And she's been doing an amazing job. She was joined for 6 months by a research student, Pierre, from the University of Toulouse, who is focusing on the research side of things. But it's been really interesting to see what comes out of that. And it's an opportunity to reflect, to celebrate what are we doing well, but also it's really important that we learn what we're not doing so well and where we need to do better. So I'm going to do, as I say, 1.5 hours into 10 minutes, a very brief overview. So to celebrate, Biosphere does seem to be really driving collaboration. There was already amazing collaborations happening on the Isle of Man anyway, but Biosphere seems to be really being a driver for that collaboration, for people to work together across sectors and across disciplines. It is a unique selling point for the Isle of Man. You know, a lot of the DFE, the Department for Enterprise agencies, they use the Biosphere brand, as it were, there's this unique selling point. And a lot of the organisations on the Isle of Man do too. And also, we have a global reputation. Within UNESCO circles, the Isle of Man is really well thought of and really well spoken of. So the World Congress of Biosphere Reserves only meets every 10 years, and it met 2 weeks ago in China. And apparently, we couldn't go, but apparently the Isle of Man was mentioned multiple times. So we do have a really good reputation on a global stage. In terms of learning and what we can do better, underlined, because of the theme of today, research, data and monitoring. Research, we know, and as is exemplified here by what Gail tries to bring together at the Research Festival, there is so much research that happens on the island or about the island, but there's a lack of cohesion, and sometimes there's people who are doing research in one area and they're not connecting to people who are doing research in similar areas. So there's a potential to connect people up more, which is obviously the work that Gail's been doing with the Research Festival. Data is quite often lacking, or it's hard to access, or it's inaccessible entirely, and where it is, it's quite often poorly managed. And in terms of monitoring, particularly environmental monitoring, it's underfunded and we need more of it. So there are areas that we can do a lot more in, and there's potential there for Biosphere, again, to be a driver for that. Where we have the Biosphere as a unique selling point, we also need to make sure that any benefits that we are getting from that are invested in those foundations of our Biosphere, in our community, in our environment, and in our prosperity. And more collaboration, particularly across government, working in government, I feel like I can say this. There is a tendency for government departments to work in silos, and even within government, the teams can work in silos. But outside of government as well, there's sectors talk in different languages, and we need to find ways to build connections between those sectors and disciplines and to translate between them, because we can only get to where we need to by everybody working together and bringing together all those different skills and different knowledge and expertise. So there's a lot to celebrate, but there's also a lot to learn. The really exciting part is, where do we go next? So it's a really exciting point. It's a lot to do, but it's an exciting point for the Isle of Man as a whole. So we have to develop the next strategy for the Isle of Man, so it takes us through the next 10 years to hopefully our next periodic review. And we get to imagine the future and then we get to create it all together, which is an incredible thing to do. So we get to look to 2036, who do we want to be as an island at that point, but beyond that, because ecosystems, societies and communities don't work in 5-year political cycles or 10-year periodic review cycles. Unfortunately, if they did, it would have made Beth's job a lot easier. But we'd like to look to even 21, 26. Where do we want to be in 100 years' time? And how do we get there? And how do we make sure that the next 10 years is getting us there? So Beth and Pierre are doing this amazing, extensive engagement with our stakeholders. Many of you I know have been interviewed by them, with our partners and with the general public as well, running events at, running activities at the agricultural shows and Tynwald Day. We use Ali Hodgson's Reimagining the Biosphere game to engage people in conversations about the biosphere. So we've got those 3 same overarching themes of community, environment and prosperity, but a clear emerging priority was research and the potential for biosphere to be a real driver for research on the Isle of Man. So, in 2036, can the Isle of Man be the Isle of Curiosity? Can biosphere drive strategic and applied research? Can it be community-led? Can we make it participatory so that it's the community that is involved in it, not just as an afterthought at the end, but that community are involved from the very beginning? We know that we're going to be facing challenges. We know that there are changes coming in lots of different ways. So research can help us find ways that we can be both ecologically and socially resilient. And in terms of innovation, creativity and technology, there is so much of that happening on the Isle of Man. And Biosphere can be a driver for that, to be more strategic about how we do things, so we can be a leader on the global stage. We want to facilitate cross-sector and interdisciplinary partnerships, and to be able to be that sort of translation piece between people who do speak those different languages. And we also want to be a hub for research and data, bringing people together as with the Research Festival, but to do that in even more ways, like throughout the year, so it's not just a one-off annual thing. And what we're really excited about is that to drive all of this, we have an excellent representative on the Biosphere Board for Research and Innovation. You may have heard of her. It's Gail Corrin. And we're so lucky to have her, because as you've all seen today, she's an incredible advocate for research and collaboration, so she's a perfect person to take that forward. So, the Isle of Man can be a living lab for sustainable solutions and a test bed for regenerative practices. And we can do that across all the different sectors that we thrive in finance, in digital, in farming, fisheries, food, drink, energy, tourism and a circular economy. Go reminder, thank you very much.